Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I'm your host, Coach Des, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. From loss, trauma, disappointments, and devastation to healing, hope, and betterment, what has grounded me is my unbreakable spirit. We all have that spirit within us. Every week, I'm here to inspire you with stories of perseverance and growth. My mission is to help you crush self-limiting beliefs and to be unapologetically you. You are your only limit, so take action today. Let your unbreakable ride begin now. This episode is brought to you by Blue Skies Life, a lifestyle brand with high-quality, ethical, and sustainable products. There are products for your mind, body, and home, everything from calming tea and luxurious shea butter to Turkish towels and silk kimonos. The holiday season is upon us, so start getting these one-of-a-kind gifts now. Go to blueskieslife.com, that's BLUSKYSLIFE.com, and use code BU20 to get 20% off your order today. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. Thank you for being here, being in our presence today. If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button. I'm so happy to have you. I hope that you enjoy this conversation and you'll keep coming back. And if you've been coming, thank you for being here and continuing to engage with me and the incredible guests that I have on my show. Today is a treat. It's a really big treat because I have Mr. Jack Brickhouse on the show, and he is many things. He's a successful author. We'll talk about his book in a little bit. He's a producer, a public speaker, an internationally published music composer, if that's not enough of everything I just said. And most importantly, what we'll talk about today too is the fact that he's a business coach. He coaches people who are desperate dreamers that think about their dreams every day, but may just need a little bit of help with execution. It's just getting to the other side of action. And he's had his fair share of pivot points in his life. So we'll learn about that. And he is out of Arizona. So you are my neighbor. You are my neighbor. So I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we're just sharing a little borderline right there.
Yeah, I call it from desert to desert. I used to have a partner there. That was our little line, desert to desert. Your desert to my desert here in Arizona.
That's right. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show today.
Absolutely.
I know you're a busy person, but I just appreciate holding this space because you have so much to offer. But I would be remiss if I didn't start with you. You know, your story and the obstacles that you've gone through to be able to do the work that you do today. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I appreciate you even having me on. I've been waiting on this interview. I think we lined this up, probably a month and a half or so ago. But here we are. It's great stuff. So I am humble. That's the first way I will describe myself as I kind of lay out, my journey. You guys may or may not understand that, but I'm not supposed to be here. There's a lot of other individuals who kind of feel that from time to time, contingent upon the communities you come from. So, but I am Jack Brickhouse. I am currently based in Phoenix, Arizona. I am originally from just outside Chicago, a little town called Gary, Indiana. Gary is known for three things. One is Michael Jackson. The Jackson 5 was birthed per se out of Gary, Indiana. The second is we have a huge steel industry there as far as steel mills. There's a lot of car plants between Indiana, Chicago, and Michigan. So we produce a lot of steel. That's kind of the backbone of the residency there. And then the third thing is not so positive. We were the murder capital of the world at one point, and that is the most murders per 100,000 people. So more currently, if you've listened to the news about Chicago and those types of things, it's kind of a similar environment of what happens in Gary, Indiana. So that's kind of the core of who I am. So, growing up in that environment, you learn a lot of things about survival first and foremost, which I think in some cases can limit growth because that was a primary responsibility of everyone. So, you have kids that are young who have to walk to school, but they have to walk through some challenging situations. Right at home, there's challenging situations. And so it's all these things that can either build character or break character, contingent upon the individual. And so that was kind of the core of what forged me. And as I look back now, it gave me the courage and built my skin and made me tough to be able to deal in the business world, because the business world is the same way. So as I grew up, again, a lot of street influence, a lot of hip hop music. The hip hop mogul was born at that time, mid 90s or so, as I was coming into my teenage years, and the stories through those songs kind of gave me hope. I listened to the P. Diddy's and the Jay-Z's and all these other great artists who would tell these stories about how they came from a similar place, and now they are here. And then, they're in so many words, they're letting you know that there are no limits. You can do whatever you want. Again, these challenges are tough, and we went through these same challenges. But so you can do it. At the same time, completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm reading at like 12, 13 years old, I'm reading The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, right? So I'm reading business books. Then again, of course, I couldn't take what I can take from it at an older age, but it was just, I was always looking for something positive. Again, with Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 coming from there, although they weren't there, that showed you that definitely a rose can grow out of the concrete and be the biggest rose, right? And so as I went through the journey, went through high school, at the end of high school, I actually had my son, 17. He's now 21. And then I had my daughter several years later at 20, and she's actually graduating this year. So that added another layer of challenges to an already challenging life as I move forward. Positive out of that is at 20, I was able to open my first legitimate business where I had to go through and get EIN numbers and, go through all the formalities of paperwork. I had partnered with a fellow student. We had a business. It was called AeroSense, and AeroSense was fragrances, oils, those types of things. And we took the things that we learned from the street, right, and applied them to the formal business setting. And so we hit the community, went out into the barbershops, beauty shops in Indiana and South Side, West Side of Chicago. And again, just peddled those things, and we generated revenue until we were able to open a kiosk in our local mall. And so that was my first experience at business. The mistake there was we hired people too quickly and stepped away from the business. Again, I'm 20 years old. We had a business, we hired people. And so, we didn't take enough time to engage with the business and learn all the analytics at that time. So that was a sidestep. Kind of moving forward from there, I went into the transportation industry as a truck driver. So I did that for just under 10 years. So I learned a lot about logistics and how just as how we're having this shipping scenario now, I understand it, to a T, because, I've lived through that. And so I learned a lot about how these Fortune 500 companies move their products and how truck, train, air, rail, all that, works together in order to get the products that we need. And I learned a lot about supply chain. So we'll go 10 years. Once I decided I didn't want to drive anymore. Again, my kids had gotten older. And so then I decided I also didn't want to be in the cold anymore. All right. And so I decided to relocate out here to the desert. That will be 11 years ago in December. And then I just kind of wanted to get back into what I love, which was music. That's my primary love is composing. And originally when I first entered Columbia College Chicago, I was there studying music, entrepreneurship for the 1 year that I did attend there at that time. And so that's kind of been the core of me, is just music. And I was always into the business side of the music outside of composing. I just happened to do that, a little bit of that as well. But when I came back to Arizona, I kind of retooled, refocused. I got I have an associate's degree in audio production technology and a bachelor's and a master's degree in organizational leadership. So I was able to take both sides. I got my business side, right, and I got my music degree, and I take those things back into the community with me. And so for about the past 5 years, 5-6 years, I launched a nonprofit organization. It's called Brickhouse Cares. And we work to be a resource bridge between organizations and communities. A lot of times the programs that come from the boardroom, right, are not necessarily received well or delivered properly to the community. And it's because there's a disconnect. A lot of people who sit in boardrooms don't know the lingo of the actual community that they're working to serve or develop programs for. And so me coming from that community and still, being able to go to those communities and connect with those people and connect with kids in the school, I try to sit on as many committees and chair as many boards as I can. So currently through Brickhouse Cares, we're working with, I'm an alumni association from a community college. I do a lot of work with the U.S. speech and debate competition. I've been doing that for the past several years, where I get to be a judge and assist the kids there. We sit with law enforcement once a month here in Arizona. We were in the prior to COVID, we were in the Capitol once a month with different committees. And again, just that's the boardroom side. On the community side, we're doing some mentor work in one of the middle schools and high schools, actually in the classroom, assisting the teachers through a program, and being able to communicate with the youth and talk them through the problems that I experienced some years back. And so that's kind of my focus now is just charitable work, working against the materialistic and consumerism that kind of affects everyone and kind of drives us to want these material things over everything else and not really value our fellow individual. And so at Brickhouse Cares, that's what we focus on is just leveraging people, right? It's not necessarily about revenue. It's just about people. So one of our current projects, I'm working with a longtime friend of mine who he's a minister and he's building his ministry. So I'm helping him to build out that corporate infrastructure. So on the backside of Brickhouse Cares is kind of what we do is work with small businesses and large businesses as well to help the CEOs or the founders, whoever it is, put their infrastructure in place to be as successful as they can with their business.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
There is so much that you pack into your life, and it's all so impactful. And so much of it is geared around service, which I have so much respect for. But if anybody is tuning in and listening to the whole arc of your story, I think one of the things that they might be asking themselves is, how do you go from the environment that you grew up in that was difficult, that was challenged by, to where you are today? What was it that made the turning point for you to be in a place where someone might say, well, your opportunities are limited, or how do you break through when it's just so easy to stay maybe in the kind of stuff that keeps you there versus allowing you to branch out? What was it for you that enabled you to do that?
Right. I mean, for me, it was just an internal assessment. I just did not want to be a statistic, right? Before I even had kids, I was considered a statistic because of the environment that we grew up in. We weren't supposed to get past a certain age, and even if we do, we were not supposed to be productive. And so I didn't want to be a part of that stereotype. And so when I did join the transportation industry, that took me out of the city. I got to travel this whole country. The only place I haven't been is South Dakota. All right. And so a lot of the things that are represented in the media, as far as how we are divided, we're not really as divided as it appears in the way that the national media, because I've been in all the nooks and crannies. I've been in the deep South of Alabama and the Carolinas. I actually went to a cotton field that was there, that was back from the 1800s and delivered, material for them. And the people were just as kind as they can be. So, I've been in all those territories. So that was exposure, right? That was exposure to the rest of the country right there. And so that assisted me in not being home and maybe being caught up in some scenarios that I more than likely would have been caught up with because I was away from the city. So I was in and out of the city. And so that really assisted in broadening my horizons. For me, I can trace it back to when I was 7 years old, which is why I ended up on the West Coast. My grandmother and grandfather brought me on a trip to visit some relatives in California. All right, and so when we came to California, it was wintertime, it was snowing, and I got to California. My relatives had pools, and they were in the pools, and it looked like everything that I had saw on Nickelodeon. I'm like, holy shit, people, this is real. And so I got back home 2 weeks later, and I asked my mom, I'm like, hey, why are we here in this cold weather when our relatives are not dealing with this, and they're living this sunny life in California? And so that kind of planted the seed in me. And so when I decided to make that transition to the West Coast, that's kind of how all that came about. But it was just an internal driving force to answer your question, just not wanting to be a statistic, taking the small opportunities that I could find and applying them. And then just really more so than anything, being uncomfortable, because I was already uncomfortable doing what I was doing. All right. And so now taking a leap and doing something positive is no different. So, instead of having something to force me to be uncomfortable, I choose when to make myself uncomfortable. And that's what I continue to do.
Yeah. What do you have to lose? Right.
Right. What do you have to lose? Right.
Well, one of the things I love is the title of the book that you did, Cigarettes and Bad Decisions, the shit I wish I'd known.
Yeah.
So you did this, and I know that it's inspired people. What was the catalyst for you doing this book?
Yeah, so I actually am a co-author. That was the first book I've been able to be a part of. And shout out to our editor, Genoa White. Genoa and I met her at Columbia College the year I was there a while back. And she actually had written a book because she had a son who has autism. And so she wrote a book about her journey. And so for me, what actually sparked it was as I was doing more stuff in the community, I watch a lot of news, right? And so I would notice that they would bring in an expert to comment on whatever the topic was, and then they would flash the expert's book. They would say, "This is such and such author of," and they would put a picture of the book for 5 seconds, and then the book goes away. And the average audience member never reads that book, but it gives you instant credibility just by seeing that the person took the time to write a book. And so I was like, all right, I have to figure out I need to write a book to give me that. I have all these other accolades, but if I write a book, now that even takes me and puts me in another round. And so I got with my buddy, that's my longtime friend, Coffee Black, and then Hollow Tip is actually my wife. And we all come from Gary, and we come from the same neighborhood. And what we were just having a conversation. So we all used to co-host a podcast together. And so we would have these one-off conversations, and we were all kind of lending the same advice, although to different individuals. So I said, hey, let's just, play around and kind of try to corral some of these ideas and see what themes we have. And so I think we started with like 30 different topics. And I said, well, the average person is not going to read this, especially for us being new. So let's get this down to about 15, something that's nice and easy to digest. And that's what we did. And so we kind of collectively, scribbled out and hammered out some ideas. It was about a year process to get that done. The title came through my partner, Coffee Black, who I think we were maybe about 3 months in, and we kind of had a loose title, and it was kind of going to be based off the podcast. But he had been hanging out with a longtime friend who was in town, and they had a late night, 3, 4 in the morning, and so he called the next day and asked, "Hey, are you doing all right? I was just calling to check in on you." And so her reply was, "Yeah, I'm all right, but I'm feeling like cigarettes and bad decisions." Right. And so that was I was like, so when he told me that story, I'm like, well, that's the title. And so I knew some people would think that it was actually about smoking and cigarettes, but I knew it would at least make you stop it to look and see, well, what is this about? And so it is it has nothing to do with smoking at all. It's a self-help book. And we collectively come together in each chapter, with the exception of one, and just try to provide our individual experiences from our journeys on certain topics. Right.
It's awesome. And it is definitely eye-catching for sure. I
Right.
love it. And it also just captures the moment, and that's real life, right? It's
Right.
when you're in real conversations with friends and you have these moments, that's what you remember. So that's a perfect way to come up with the title.
Right.
I think it's so awesome. But I want to talk about too what you do now in coaching people. So who are the kind of people you coach, and what is it that you focus on with them?
Yeah, so I focus on mental mindset. So maybe 3 years back now, maybe 4, I was a part of an organization called SCORE. For those who may not know, SCORE is a national organization through the Small Business Administration. It is a collection of retired executives, from president, CEO, the marketing, anywhere in that room, who have retired in most cases and have decided to lend their business expertise to the community. And everything that SCORE offers is free of charge. And so there's a variety of individuals who come through that door. So when I came in, when I was asked to come in, I was actually like the youngest person by about 15 or 20 years that they had. And that's actually what they were looking for, because they wanted to revamp the video and get some fresh blood in. They were getting some entertainment and people coming from that realm, and just into realms that they didn't have the necessary connection with the individual. And so that was a great opportunity for me to connect with various businesses, from online educational courses to people one gentleman was trying to start a bakery, and everything in between there. Mm-hmm. And so the core of business is the same, all right, of the core things that you need to do. And then outside of that, it becomes industry specific. But as far as building a business, the core things that you have to do are all pretty similar. And so what I focused on, they asked me to put together a presentation. So I put together a workshop. It was called Positive Plus Negative Equals Success. Because what our branch of SCORE didn't have, although it had these are the ABCs of business, these are taxes, this is how you use social media and all these other things. It didn't talk about the real struggle for those newer entrepreneurs, which is the mindset, right? Are you ready to even do this? Like, it sounds good, and I'm going to be my own boss, and I'm not going to do all these things. But it's a hell of a lot of work. It's more work than you've more than likely done in whatever regular format job you've had. And so that was what Positive Plus Negative Equals Success was all about. Is that, yeah, positive things are going to happen, but you need those negative things as well to help propel you along through your career. So when something negative happens, you can't quit, right? If you're going to be the business owner, and challenges don't stop. People say, well, I'm going to hire all these people and then I'm going to kick back and still no, right? Mark Zuckerberg is one of the top CEOs in the world. And what is he doing? He's not kicked back, right? He's dealing with Congress and Senate and all these. So it's not fun. So yeah, I'm pretty sure every now and then he gets a day or two where he can go and do these things. But the bigger your company gets and the more clientele you build, the busier you get, especially if you're at the top of the chain, because everything that happens is a reflection on you. When the oil spill happened a few weeks back off the coast, who did they call first? The CEO, no matter if he was in France or wherever he was. He got a call that said, hey, you need to get your ass back to headquarters right now because there's thousands of gallons in the ocean right now.
There's a
Right?
hot mess going on right now that you need to handle.
That
Yeah.
you need to handle, right? And so that's kind of the core of what I do. So through Brickhouse Cares, that's what we do. We work with different entities to help build a structure. It's a lot of business development and teaching them the importance of networking and actually connecting them into the communities. We show them that the being in the community, actually participating in charitable organizations will actually help you to drive revenue and get visibility, and just those sorts of things. So that's kind of my primary focus. Again, it's just again on the front side is helping those resources get to the right place and making sure that they're received properly when they get there. Because in minority communities, the number one thing is trust, right? If they say, if nobody knows you around here, don't come around here, right? And so you can't come in off, fresh out the boardroom when you have no connection and say, hey, we're doing all these great things, because that's happened many times. And so, I just try to be that bridge that can work with different businesses and different people in the community to say, hey, these things are available. Like, for instance, the ministry that I'm working with now, I'm helping the CEO to get connected with a fiscal sponsor. As they have a grant writer. And so, by having a fiscal sponsor, it takes a lot of pressure off a new business, because your board of directors is solidified. All these other things are in place through having a fiscal sponsor. And so, it's just taking those small opportunities to educate. And so that's kind of the coaching that I do. It's like, hey, let's sit down and let's figure this out, and teaching the importance of strategy. It's like, I know you want to get here, but we have to put a strategy in place. And then we have to put a project plan in place. And then we need the execution plan, and we need a timeline. So now you can be accountable. We're not just floating saying, I'm going to get this business off the ground and we're going to do these things. You can say, well, what did I accomplish last week? Nothing. Right? That can be a bad thing or a good thing. Right? And so it's you have to always be accountable. And it's no different than the internal assessment that I was speaking about earlier. Right? Is I have to be accountable for what I'm engaging in and what I'm doing. And it's no different for, business owners. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's amazing, and everything that you described, because I think people can relate in some ways, even if you haven't started your own business and you've been a part of one. You see the steps that it takes to become successful, from to the project plan and execution and goals and metrics and all of this stuff. But one of the things you pointed out that I think is unique and is not always talked about is the community.
Yeah.
And making and creating a bridge for people that will trust what you're doing, can believe in what you're doing, talk about what you're doing. And it's a little bit more of this organic, authentic, connected way of doing things, versus just, here's my ad.
Right.
Here's this stuff on social media, or here's, this postcard. Because we live in a world today that is it's funny, because as much as we say we're connected,
Mm-hmm.
kind of disconnected. Because everything, like, you and I are having this conversation, we're being very present right now.
Right.
You're listening to me, I'm listening to you, and we're here together. And this is an example of building community.
Right.
But most of the times it's passive discussion. It's, you see something, you can engage with it if you want to, you can like it, you can not like it, you can comment on it, but it's passive.
Mm-hmm.
And the kinds of things that you're talking about is very active. It's going out, having conversations, building trust. So by the time businesses grow and make an impact, it's a real impact with real people.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, people have to know you. Other businesses have to know that you're out there, like outside of whatever your internet representation or flyers or whatever it may be. People just still want to engage, right? And so I use social media all the time. I use a lot of LinkedIn to connect with individuals, and so I think a lot of people want that to be the be all of their connection. It's all going to be social. But there comes to a point where it's all right. Hey, let's get together. If they're here locally, let's get together, or let's jump on a formal Zoom session and actually have a dialogue or a discussion. And so social media can be used as a great gateway to start conversations with individuals that you may or may not have contact with without social media. But then there's the follow up on that and actually taking the time to build a relationship. So, I get requests and I try to answer all my messages. I've had a student say, hey, I see that you're in leadership and have a leadership course in high school and I would love to ask you some questions. Hey, let's do it. All right. But if you just send me your album and say, hey, my album just came out and I've never had any interaction with you before, I'm skip, right? Because there's too many other things to do. But hey, if you say, hey, I'm a new artist and you build and we have this relationship, then yeah, I'll check out, what you have. I'm all about connections.
Yeah, exactly. But it starts with planting a seed.
That's right.
Right? It is not just this tree that all of a sudden emerges out of nowhere. It's with every water that you give, there's a little bit of growth that comes with that. And it's usually in a series of engagements, not just a one time situation. And that's really amazing. I do want to come back to one of the things that is so key that you said that you work on with business and coaching, which is mindset. It's so huge. I actually listened to when I was looking on your media with your Thinking Out Loud podcast series that you did, and I listened to the episode called "When Life Gets in the Way, Find Another Route," and you talk about mindset in there. And what I loved about it is how we have choices, and usually what gets in our way is not things; it's us.
It's us. It's us.
It's ourselves.
Yeah.
And so is that, I'm just curious, in the different interactions that you've had, is that a theme that you tend to see when you're working with, entrepreneurs, regardless of what stage that they're in, when you think about mindset?
Yeah, because it can be scary, it's challenging. So let's say for beginners. So if you're just starting out, the questions the probing questions I ask is, are you ready not to get paid every 2 weeks or every week, right? Because now you're invoicing. You're the boss, and you want to be the boss. This is what being the boss is. So now you have to invoice your client, right? And they're going to have a 30-day period or whatever. You have to fit into that. And in the meantime, business and operations are still going for you, right? So what are you going to do? How are you going to work that out? The next thing, if you generate revenue through this business, that's not necessarily your personal income. That's the business's income, right? You have to learn how and when can you pay yourself. Right, it's all of these. So it's these things. So when you launch this business, you put your money into it, or what you put your time into it, even if it's not money. And your spouse says, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, we're not making any money. These bills are coming in. Right? The kids have to go join the soccer team or the football team. When you're going to do something?" And so, although another entrepreneur will understand your process, and that's what I tell them: befriend an entrepreneurial community, because they'll understand these things. That not all growth is visual, especially from the outside. And so you may be working your butt off, but your spouse doesn't see that, because although your check is coming in 30 to 45 days, it's not there today. And Friday, the rent is due, right? The cell phone bill is due. And so now here comes that pressure. Another thing, a lot of people want the people around them, your friends and family, to support what they're doing. Those are the last people who jump on board, right? They know you and you're just another person to them, right? It's like, take someone like LeBron James's kids, although he's LeBron James, they get excited over other athletes because he's just that, right? And so it's no different. So the people close to you won't really jump on until they see people outside jumping on to what you're doing. Then they say, "Oh, you're a big deal, son," or hey nephew, right? And so people get frustrated with that, and they're like, "Well, I'm doing these things, and I thought my family would be supportive, and I thought my friends would be there." And they tell me, "Well, just why are you doing that? Just quit and go get another job or 9 to 5." Right. And so it's all these things. These are the pressures that while you enjoy making or delivering your service or making your product, this is what's really going on if you're the boss of the company, and especially in the beginning. And so one of my other sayings is preparation is the separation. Like, you have to mentally prepare for these things, and you have to take care of these things inside, because by the time they are outside, they've been manifested. It's kind of too late to make an impact. They're playing out in front of you. So now what you can do, though, is dig back in internally and figure out how to change some of those things internally. Internally, so you have a better manifestation. And it's all mental, because it's hard at any level. It's hard as a coach. You know that when you're coaching and you have clients that don't listen to what you're telling them. And so at every level, regardless of the industry, is tough. and it's always going to be tough there because especially now the landscape is changing. I would say more rapidly than it has in a long time, and so
Mhm.
there's really no time to be sit back and be comfortable. We're in a global marketplace, so instead of you just being competing with this group, now you're competing with this group. You know, right? It's huge. It's everybody, and
Yes.
so just being, as you mentioned earlier, just being in an active mindset and an active state of mind, understanding that every day I wake up, there's going to be challenges in my personal life and my professional life. And I can't let the two bleed over, although they will. And so that's where I always talk about balance, right? The balance is important. It's not living in excess in either way. It's just living in balance, right? In the positive plus negative equals success, I use the analogy of a car battery. Car battery has a negative post and a positive post, right? If the negative post fails, the battery's not working. If the positive post fails, they have to work in unison. All right. That's why you have a positive post and a negative post. And so you have to take those negative things with those positive things in order to make any progress or move that car down the road.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, life is like that, right? Where there's darkness, there's light. There's a
Right.
yin and a yang. There's good and
Right.
there's bad. And it's inevitable. And the
Right.
scale will tilt back and forth and back and forth. And it's always this finesse that
Right.
we have to manage the balance and how it gets skewed,
Right.
all the time. What about when people get to that place where they want to give up? Because things aren't going well and they might be coming to you saying, I've tried this many things, I've tried and it's not working. I don't know if I should be doing this anymore.
Go ahead.
I don't know if that conversation
Yeah.
happens. I feel like it does.
Oh, it always happens. Yeah. Again, it's tough. And
What does that coaching look like?
yeah, so I ask those tough questions, right? So yeah, you're tired and you're ready to give up, but what is your competitor doing? Are they tired and they ready to give up? And it's hard, right? And that's not always taken in the best way. But again, as your coach, I'm not here to be your friend. As your a corporate advisor, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to ask you the hard questions. And so that's what I'm going to ask you. If you're tired now, you're not going to make it. I can tell you from personal experience. You can call this. She'll tell you the same. If you're tired at whatever point that you are, you're not built to run a company or an organization at the current time, is what I would say. If that's
Mhm.
how you're feeling, it's not that you can't ever do it. You can do whatever you want. But if your mindset is telling you it's time to quit, right, it may not be for you. And but I also use that in a positive light. And I always say that until you feel like you want to quit, you're not even halfway through your journey of making the progress that you want to make progress into. I still feel like I want to quit. I want to quit every day at something, right? Stuff is hard and it gets
I'm
difficult,
right
right? You have those days and you're like, why the hell am I doing this? I can just quit and go do this and go do that. And that's the other. And so I kind of use that and say, now you're at a decision point. So you're ready to quit. You're thinking about giving up. And what I'll remind them of is you're roughly in that halfway point now. So turning around is the same distance as going forward now because you're at the 50-yard line. So if you
there.
turn back around, you can go 50 yards that way, or you can keep going the
Game
other 50
time
yards.
decision. It's a
Right.
game time decision.
It's a right, and that's what it comes down to. And so those are the things. And so I say take the time and not. Well, so one of our chapters in Cigarettes and Bad Decisions is emotions will get you broke, right? And when you're going into business, there you got to take the emotional state and the emotional feelings out of it. Not that you're not going to feel them. It's just that you have to take those, process them, and then make a logical business decision on how to move forward. Right, right, because that's the reality.
House just laid it down
Yeah,
right there. But it's true. I think anybody listening right now is taking themselves back to that place
yeah,
where they were in an emotional state. It happens to us all the time. There's going to be certain things where you're on high and making decisions in that state is tricky,
it's
right?
tricky.
Is
Very,
tricky to do, but your
very.
emotions are real, and sometimes you need to take a pause and
Yeah,
come back to things when you're in a more logical, rational state than in a heightened emotional state in order to make intelligent, decisions.
right, right.
But
No,
that's so true. Wow.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean,
going
yeah,
back to so many moments that I've had where I just wanted to stay in bed.
yeah,
I didn't even know,
right.
but for me, personally,
Hmm.
it was when I thought about that moment, because it still happens, is it's bigger than me.
Right,
What I'm doing is bigger than me. This isn't about me. If it was that, then yeah, of course, what's
right,
happening? You stay in
right,
bed.
right,
Nothing wrong
right,
with that. fine, I'll
Right.
stay there. But it's, I'm not in service of me. And I think that is why I relate to so much of what you're doing, is because you're in service of others. And when you're in service of others, that changes the game.
Changes the game drastically, right? So we have another chapter: pursue happiness, and the money will come. And again, it's just about doing what it is that you love, and understanding you still have to make a living. And I'll say there's two folds to that, because doing what you love to do may or may not be for you. It's one thing to do something as a hobby, but it's another thing to do things under pressure, and when people are paying you for them, and when you have to do them over and over and over. Let's talk sports again. If you're in the NBA, there's 82 games in a regular season, and then there's a bunch of practices in between. So you're playing basketball a whole lot. It's not just, I'm on the court, I'm just on game day. Basketball is your life. And so, yeah, you do this, but now there's injuries because you're doing this so much, right? There's going to be mishaps, there's going to be challenges, but figuring out what it is that you want to do, and just understanding that you can make and generate revenue off of anything that you want to do, right? It's just some things may be more simplistic because there's a pattern in place for them already. And then some things may be a little bit more challenging, and then your demographics and your geography and all these things go into it. But an example I give is there's a video on YouTube, and I think I reference this in the book, with a gentleman who apparently is into medieval weapons, right? And so he has these swords, and he has these torches and all these other things. And he does hair, right? He works at a salon. He opened a salon, and he does women's hair using blow torches and knives and all these other things. All right. And so then I asked you, if I said, hey, Des, I want you to try this new salon. This guy uses torches and swords and all these things. Are you going to go sit down? I don't know. Right. On average. But this guy is
Brickhouse tries it out first. Let me know how it goes.
right. So
and then I'll see what's happening next.
And so then you think about that. So now this guy, you have to book this guy months in advance because he's doing what he loved to do. He figured out how to do this stuff, right? And so if he can convince women to sit down in a chair and let him handle their hair with all of these different things, why can't you do what you want to do? All right. So you think about it. If he told his brother or father, hey, I'm going to do this, what would they have told him? Get the fuck out of here, right?
Yes.
All right.
Like, you need to come up with a new idea.
With a new idea. And so he's delivering. So that's just like one of the most extreme cases that I use. So, you're in between. The average person is in between 0 and that. So there's a lot of space to figure out what it is you want to do. So if that guy can do that, you can do whatever it is you want to do. It's challenging. Like, there's no easy way around it. There's a challenge every day.
Yeah. It's about ownership, and it's yours.
Right.
I think we want to be able to point to other people, but at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to take accountability for the things that we want, and it's up to us to get there. And I've been having more conversations with people lately, and to your very point about when you're doing something new, especially family members or people or even friends,
Right.
people that are around you, people close to you, don't believe in you. One of the things about entrepreneurship sometimes is that it's a lonely place. It's a
Extremely.
lonely place with you and your ideas.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to become your own best advocate, sometimes your own best friend. You're sitting there talking yourself in to the different things of why you're doing what you're doing and why it's important for you to persevere. But that grit is such a big part of it, is the mental space that you carry for yourself to just be able to move forward, because you don't have this whole cheerleading team yet.
Right.
Probably will come over time, like you said, when you have trust, but it takes time to get to that place.
Right. And then even then, that those cheerleaders can turn on you, right, at any given time. So it's not, there's highs and there's lows to it, because everybody supports you when it's fun to support you, but then it doesn't take much for it to go the other way. And so, again, being able to adapt and stay in the course is the key to it, is committing to what it is that you're doing. And of course, you love support. The average person loves support and having people close to them, pour into them. But, it's not, everybody doesn't understand exactly what you said, what you're doing as an entrepreneur and stepping out in something new, or it can be a business that has been proven and you're franchisee or whatever it may be. There's still ups and downs and challenges, and there's going to be waves of, it's like the superhero, like at the end of the Dark Knight, right? Sometimes you got to be the hero they need, and then sometimes you got to go away, and that's just part of it. If your business depends on public support and public PR and those types of things.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think too with mindset, I love the analogy of, you know, scarcity versus abundance,
Right.
because I think in entrepreneurship too, there's that fear of competition, like, oh well, there's other people doing this, well, for every KFC there's a Popeyes or a Church's, and you can go on and on, but they're still all there. You
They're
can
still
make a
there.
choice every day about which one you're going to go to, but
That's right.
there's the competition of the chicken sandwich,
Right.
or it's the competition of the Nike shoe,
Right.
or whatever new stuff is coming out in every retail industry ever made. But it doesn't stop people from coming out. I mean, look at beauty.
Right.
Holy crap, there's
Right.
like so many products, and yet there's still things coming into fruition and new companies that are saying, this is why we're different.
Right.
This is why you should go with our products over this. So when you have an abundance mindset, there's enough to go around.
Plenty.
You just have to, differentiate yourself, and that, I know that is easier said than done.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's all a part of, just preconditioning and social engineering and just how the culture is shaped. Again, we are all about materialism in general, just as a general media, consumerism, buy. Even if you don't need, you need to buy the new stuff just because it came out. If Apple releases a new phone, you need to get it because you need to have the newest stuff. But then why? What did your previous phone stop working? Are you a world business traveler who needs the most current, right? Or like, what is it? Why do you need it? Or why do you need these new outfits? Or why do you have to have a new? Not saying that you can't do it, but that's just the basis for what the average person is experiencing. And so you're
Just
being
because you can doesn't mean you should.
doesn't mean you should, right? Right. So right. And so it's just discipline. And so, I try to make, I guess that's another point as far as mental mindset. You have to go from, thinking as a consumer to thinking as a business person. And it's, it's two different types of thought. So as a consumer, you're worried about buying and competing and being with everybody else, where on the other side, you're worrying about scaling your business properly and your financials in a different way and how to obtain the consumer. And it's much more in depth than when you're just on the consumer side, purchasing these products. But because, we all feel that we need to be what the 1% is, although they tell you every year only 1 or 2% of people achieve this, right? And just in this specific country, everybody, the other 98% feels that they need to, even if they can't obtain that, look like they have that, right? And so again, that's just spending and spending and spending. And it's because, we're just being bombarded with all of these advertisements and from TV or streaming, and you watch these shows, and these shows are reinforcing stereotypes, which are, again, it just goes to the social engineering of our society and our culture and how people operate. And so,
there's algorithms, just like the social dilemma from that show that came out in 2020 back in September.
Right.
When I watched that, the whole thing is the double-sided coin that is marketing and social media. On the one hand, it's oh wow, we get to be connected and keep up with each other. But on the other hand, in the background, there's all these algorithms that are engineered towards the things that you gravitate to. So, oh, well, there's that thing that I've been thinking about that I saved that I might consider buying. And next thing you know, 22 times a day, that thing is popping up, and all of a sudden it's in your Amazon cart. You don't even it was like, I don't even know how that just happened.
Right. How that happened. Right.
Right. But
Right.
that's just how it works. And it's interesting to me, and I don't know, everybody goes on a different journey, but when I was in my 20s, it was, you start making money and you attain a little bit of success, and it was very, to your point, materialistic, this car, this bag, or this thing, but it was very fleeting. For every moment that I acquired some new thing, it lasted for about 5 minutes. You open it, it's this shiny object, it's pretty cool, and then you're like, and then there's some things that I would go back in my closet, and a year had gone by and I never used the thing. Whatever it was, like a pair of shoes, because it was just such a big deal. But the hype was real, but obviously not that real because I never used it. I mean, It was this whole, looking back on it, it was just this very instant gratification, very temporary thing. And I find in my experiences now that, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not things that I'm interested in buying, because I think cool and there's utility in it, but I find myself valuing experiences
Hmm.
a lot more than things.
Right, right, and again, and so that's an internal change within you, right? And so, and I think we're saying the same thing. If you want to go and buy all new things, by all means, have at it. Everybody's entitled to do what they want to do. But I think now we're just kind of talking from a different perspective. As again, I've been there as well. Again, I need to buy these things and do these things, but that was because of I was a product of the environment. So I had to make an internal change and say, well, you know what? These things don't matter. These material things don't necessarily matter. Let me take life in a different direction. I was fortunate enough to come through this scenario and get to this point, and so now let me just focus on giving back, right? To the how can I give back? And everybody thinks that you have to be. A lot of people say, whenever I get wealthy, then I'm going to start a nonprofit and I'm going to give and give and give. I'm like, well, you can give now. And one of the biggest resources nonprofits need is not necessarily revenue, it's time. It's people, right? They need you to come volunteer and help with these events and pass out these resources and shake hands with the community and do all of these other things, and that doesn't cost, right? You can. One of the things we do with the community colleges, I'm on the scholarship board, so I sit twice a year and go through the scholarships, and then when they narrow it down, I go sit down and be a part of the interview, right? And so giving time is just as important, as giving money and taking the time to connect with the community.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I know we've gotten to know you through
Yeah,
the things that you've shared, but I have some specific questions for us to
yeah.
get to know you a little bit more. So I'm going to start with Mr. Jack Brickhouse. What are 3 words that best describe you?
Um, Say resilient, integrity, and I'll say energetic.
I would
Yeah,
agree with that. I would
those
definitely agree with that for sure.
those are my
Okay,
three.
what about what is something that you're working on improving right now?
Something that I'm working on improving. It kind of ties into what we just got done talking about. Is just continuously moving away from media that puts me back in that materialistic state of mind. And so it's again, not disconnecting with everything. That's not the message here. It's just limiting the time that I'm, on these different social platforms and just making sure that I'm making meaningful engagements. I read more again, and I mean, I was already reading probably. I usually read probably about 50 books a year, if not more. So, give or take the year and what's going on. So it's just, reading and staying in a spot where my vibrations are higher than they are lower, and not engaging in as much media and content with lower vibrating material.
Oh, I love that. I think that is an aspiration that we can all put on our, list of things to focus on. That is amazing. Okay, what's a self-limiting belief that you've had in your life that you've had to overcome and get past?
Oh man, I'm never going to get out of this small town, right? Is how do I get from this small area to whatever it was I wanted to do in business or music at that time. And when you look around, there were not a lot of opportunities to engage with people who had went off and done these things that can kind of be a mentor, just kind of based off of the community. And that's one of my bigger reasons of giving back the way that I do, is to make sure that people understand and get exposed to different opportunities and things, because the more exposure an individual has, the bigger you can then think. And so as I was able to get exposed again to California when I was younger, and then, go through a series of other exposures, that's what helped me to penetrate, the environment that I came from. So again, it was all internal, but just using those things as motivation.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love it. Okay. What is one thing that you want to see changed in the world?
One thing that I want to see changed, I'll keep it on track with what we're talking about, is just people engaging and valuing their fellow man, woman, regardless of race or any of that stuff, over material possessions. That's it, being community. So I had an opportunity to participate in 2 study abroads. One was with the Maya people in Belize, the indigenous people of Belize. And so I got to go there and stay in some of their villages and ate food in their homes, and got to talk with their kids. And they told us about their struggles that they were having. Learned a lot about their leadership and how there are 52 different villages. And when it's time to vote on a major subject, There's buses that start at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they go to every village and pick up, each chief from each village, and they all come back. They huddle up, have a meeting. Everybody leaves, goes back to their respective village, pitches it to their council, whoever it is, and then they come back. And so it's all about assisting. So these are volunteers that get up and drive these buses and make sure all these things. So just taking care of us as people, valuing that first again, and then placing the material possessions, or instead of trying to outshine the person next to you, like you said, well, I got this bag, or I got this Benz, or I have whatever it may be, competing with the person that lives on your same block, right? You're in the same boat, so you can have whatever, right? But you didn't go anywhere. You're in the same space more than likely, right? Or you're in the same. Yeah. So what are you? So, the public loses, but business wins, because if you go buy the white whatever bag, and then your friend goes and buys a black one, that's 2 sales for that manufacturer of those bags, right? But you guys are now going to go together with different colored bags to the same place, right? Free promotion for the business, right? And so again, but just taking the time and say, all right, well, I spent this money on this bag, but I know my brother or sister was struggling over here, and instead of me going and figuring that out and saying, hey, can I help you out here, I'm gonna go get this bag because I got to shine on them. They're hurting, so I'm gonna pull up on them in this. Again, that's a mindset that was created, and that we have to overcome.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that sense of competition,
Yeah.
that people have, that for whatever reasons. It's
Right.
like when every time you watch those movies, and, some neighbor sees a neighbor, whatever it is, the car that they just came home with, or, the Christmas decorations that they did on their house. And now all of a sudden it becomes this mission to, okay,
Yeah. One up them.
I got this, and
Right.
it's just like,
Right. And so again, so you watch that movie, and then that's integrated into the average person's life, because now so such and such just got that. It's just like in the movie, right? I'm gonna go do this, and that's part of the issue. But again, it's an internal change.
It is. It is. It does all start from within. Okay, so what is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given?
One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given, to read all of my paperwork. Every document, read. So simple, right? But actually take the time to read through documents, right? And I learned that very early on. But taking it to all that fine print and all those things, they're telling you, and they're laying out the law for you right there. And if you choose not to read it, well, that's on you. Again, the law says not knowing the law is not an excuse. That's the law, right? And so actually over the past year, I was able to do some work with a Native American tribe who was just getting established. I had never done anything in tribal government. It was an eye-opening experience, not just about tribal government, but about how our government works. And so I learned a lot about the Constitution. I got to study the Constitution. I even studied before the Constitution to understand how everything came together and why. Then I learned about contract law, tort law, all these things. And then you learn something as simple as, you're in Las Vegas. Have you ever read your Las Vegas city charter?
Interestingly enough, because I just started another business,
Okay.
I actually have started looking at that.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Right. And
information, but I'll tell you, because just to put myself on blast a little bit, to your very point of, because it started another LLC,
yeah.
and there was a little error that I had made,
Uh-huh.
the type of LLC that it was, because when you go to a bank, there's something specific that they look for in order for them to feel confident in the kind of banking you're going to do with them. And there's something as what we think is simple in your designation. If you don't choose the right thing, they don't want to do that kind of business.
Right.
So you have to go all the way down to the fine print and why. But I appreciate the process. I appreciate it because it is in all of those little nuances that you learn. Okay, that matters.
Right.
It matters in business because if you do things this way, it's going to be construed in one way, and if you do it in another way, it means something entirely different.
Right.
And if you take the time and the upfront legwork, you could be totally screwed.
Right. Yeah, very simple, right? It's very easy. And yeah, so the average person, as you think, you don't read the city charters. You don't read, and here in Arizona, we have Arizona revised statutes, and some places they're compiled laws, or each state calls them something different, but every state has one. and they're all kind of based off of the Constitution. And so those things, and here in Arizona, let's just say the revised statute, govern every part of your life. If you have a transportation issue, you can go to the transportation title. Everything, whether it's interaction with law enforcement or dealing with your license, everything is laid out. The processes and procedures. If you're dealing with property, again, there's all the laws of property are right there for you. And then going back to your city charter. So the state and the municipalities, your cities, tell you how they're going to interact with you. But because we're watching movies about how we can one up our neighbor, right, or on Instagram scrolling, right? We don't read that, and all of these things are free, right? You can go on whitehouse.org or .gov. I mean, anytime you want. You can go in the Library of Congress anytime you want for free. You can go all of these different places, and they have all of these free resources for you to learn these things. But who wants to learn the law, right? It's boring. It's a lot of text, definitions, but that governs everything that you do.
I tell you, it's fun because in my undergraduate degree, I majored, of all things, in political science.
Okay.
You can imagine what that might have been like.
Yeah.
And I remember in high school, I was in competition government class. So you basically meet up with another high school and talk about your knowledge of the Constitution. I couldn't tell you today all the things I had to remember back then, but it is, like you said. I mean, it's a lot of information. But the funny thing is that it is useful because then you become a wise consumer of the services around you versus letting things just happen to you.
That's
Because
right.
that things happen when you're not a part of the process. It will happen to you. All of a sudden, something is going on in the community and you're upset about it when you could have learned, you could have contributed, you could have participated. And that goes back to this, being active just as much in the community is things like law, even though it's maybe not as fun.
Right. Yeah. And it's not, but those are the rules of the game. So it's like, if you've never played Monopoly and you just sit down and start playing the game, you're going to make a lot of errors because you don't know the rules of the game. And if somebody else is beating the crap out of you, they read the rules, right? Like, hey, I'm going to take advantage. You don't know the rules? Hell yeah, I'm going to run the table on you. So it's no different in regular life. They know most businesses operate on the pretense that people don't know the law and regulations, and they're just going to take what they, whatever's given to them and sign it and have read it. And they're just, because as we've been talking about materialistic, they just want the end product. I just want this car. I just want this house or whatever it is. So, whatever this fine print says, it's going to be all right because I got this house or I have this car or I have this loan or whatever it is. And so, it's just super important to do that. And again, you don't have to become a law professor. It's just taking the time to read small things that involve your life. You read a little bit today, a little bit next week, right? And just taking the time to learn. And so, like I tell a lot of my buddies back home, when it comes to traffic stops with, minorities, if you know the law, you don't have to do all these other things, right? You just ask a couple questions and then you let the officer do what they're going to do. And then you handle it on the back end, right? It's all because our government, as you're talking about with the Constitution, we're a paper government. Everything is paper that we do, whether it's state or on the federal side, or local municipality. And so just, taking the time to be familiar, if you do get a citation or have to go to court, you're not scared. Normally it's like, oh, I got something from the state. I got to go to court, and you're nervous and you just go, and then you're in front of the judge. I mean, it can be something as small as a traffic ticket. You feel like you're on trial to go to jail because you're in the courtroom and you're not used to being in that space. But again, if you take the time to know the laws, the great thing about government is everything is laid out for you on all the procedures and processes they have to use. So all you have to do is make sure that they are following these processes and procedures as a government. That's all it comes down to. And the way you do that is by taking the time to read all of the materials that they give you, read the policies and the procedures of the government agency that you're working in or working with, and then what the municipality says, what the state says, what the feds say, and now you know this stuff. So now you're going in and you have an idea of what to do and what to say, and so it's not scary anymore. And I learned a lot of this, again, working with tribal government.
That's amazing. And I think the other thing too is that information is far easier to access today than ever before.
Absolutely.
I remember back in school, I physically went to a library, got a book, opened it up, flipped through the pages, maybe ordered a book, highlighted it, and it was this whole process. Now, a lot of things it's available online. It might be 200 pages of
Yep.
online that you're, scrolling through, but it's very accessible. And I
Yep.
think that is a privilege that
It
we have,
is.
is being able to get it a lot quicker
Right.
than, what might have been the case before.
Right.
Um, so how can people follow Mr. Jack Brickhouse and the work that you are doing, so they can keep up with it, or, learn more about you or reach out to you?
Absolutely. For my nonprofit, Brickhouse Cares, it's just brickhousecares.org. You can learn a little bit about what we do foundation wise. Social media, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, I'm always happy to connect with individuals there and have a conversation and shed a little advice if I can. So those are the primary ways to contact me on mrjackbrickhouse.org as well.
Awesome. Cool. I will make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can easily do that if they want to reach out to you. Is there anything that you want to talk about in terms of programs or things that you have coming up next that you're excited about?
Yeah, so actually, just recently in September, I released my first solo fiction book. It's called Blind Drift, something like a screenplay. For me, I didn't, because we did a self-help book the first time. I didn't
Hmm.
want to get boxed in as a self-help writer and just say all he does is write self-help books. And so I got uncomfortable because I don't even read fiction. Right, I'm not a big fiction reader. And so I said I want to write something that can't be compared to this because it's in a completely different category. And so it took me about 6 years to finish that because it went through a variety of changes. First, it was just going to be a script or a screenplay, and then I was like, oh well, no, I'm going to put it in book format. And then I was like, well, you know what, I really want to do a hybrid. And so there was a lot of that, kind of revising and restructuring that took a bulk of it, and then just kind of pushing the actual storyline along. And again, shout out to Genoa White. When it comes to this book thing, that is as my right hand. And so, she kind of helped to once I wrote so the entire book is 450 pages. That's why it ended. That's what it ended up being. And so she kind of helped me get that outside perspective and say, hey, well, this is how this is perceived. So maybe we can, change maybe this sentence or these words or whatever it may be. She was always good in assisting and actually shaping some of the storyline and figuring out ways to move it along. And so that was great. And what I also did with Blind Drift was I created a music. I call it a musical landscape. So it's a soundtrack for the novel. It's called Blind Drift, something like a screenplay. It's just a soundtrack for the novel. The book is Amazon, wherever you get books. The soundtrack is Apple, Spotify, wherever you want to listen to that. And there's no lyrics. Again, I'm a composer. And so a lot of the compositions I do, like commercial, I do a lot of background music for hotels and, supermarkets, all that type of stuff. And so that's what I wanted to do. So while you're reading, you can throw the soundtrack on the background and just kind of have some music playing because, as a composer, if you put an artist who has lyrics, they then take over the song and the individual connects with their story that they told. But
Mhm.
I can tell you a story if you just sit down and listen to music, and you'll experience the things because we connect with music due to sound waves and frequencies and all those other things. So I just kind of let the individual use the musical landscape to kind of help either think or develop their story or just kind of listen to some emotions that I may have been feeling when I was composing. So I wanted to jump out and do that. So that's been cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is such a dynamic piece of work that you're doing, bringing something to life in such an interesting way. And I didn't appreciate the intimacy of composition, honestly, until I started podcasting about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the journey was in developing a brand and developing a message was having the right kind of composition that helped elevate what you are trying to do, with
Right.
your message, and going through that process a couple of times, to find the right sweet spot of,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things that emote
Mm-hmm.
with music.
Mm-hmm.
Is it sad? Is it bright? Is it pontification? Is,
Right.
there's all these different ways and directions you can go with it.
Right.
So I think that's such an added layer that
Mm-hmm.
you have with this piece of work, because it takes it into life in
Right.
a different frequency.
Yeah, yeah. So as you talk about undertaking a project, that was 6 years. That there's again with that, there's ups, there's downs, there's I want to quit. Why the hell did I take this on? I could have did another self help book and did this shit in 6 months,
Right.
right? Right?
Comfortable. You've done it
Yeah,
before. You could do it again.
I can do it again, right? And that was the number one thing. And so, I committed to it, and here we are. So that was definitely an achievement that I was proud of, most definitely. And the last thing I'll say, I was doing an interview in the UK, and I kind of use a golf analogy. So I like playing golf, and so what I fell in love with golf is, as we talked about, is the is you versus yourself, right? So you're playing against other people, and you guys are in competition, but it's really only just you. And so as you play golf, let's just say you're at the first hole is a par four, which means you should be able to get the ball from the tee to the flag in the hole in 4 swings. And so as you tee off, sometimes you have a great first shot, and it sets you up, and it goes straight down the middle of the green and lands where you need it. But sometimes it goes to the left, it goes to the right, it's in the brush, it's behind a tree. And so what happens is the
It's in a
better you it's in the pond, right? And so the better your past self performs, you set yourself up for your next shot, or for your next shot in life. It's the same thing. So you can't. So what happens is, in the beginning, if you come, like I come from playing basketball when I was younger, which is a huge emotional sport, right? It's all about being emotional and showing your emotions, and watching football. And this is completely the opposite. So I have to. That was the hardest curve, is when I hit a bad shot, not reacting like, fuck, I messed up,
yeah.
and taking all that and burying that down, and being calm and saying, okay, that's what it is. So, and just understanding that there's 4 shots for a reason. And just because you hit a bad shot doesn't mean that you've actually blown the hole. That's what it seems like in the beginning, because everybody wants to be a perfectionist. But what you're actually, and if you're playing to get somebody, is your mental strength versus their mental strength. So they may have hit a better long ball than you did, but when it gets time to putt, they may be horrible at putting, and they may blow it, and you can still win the hole. So you're always in life, in entrepreneurship, just your old self is setting your new self up. So the decisions you make today is setting yourself up next week to either succeed or fail, based off of your actions. And so it's similar to the game of golf. That's why I love golf.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Oh man, honestly, I could talk to you and lose track of time completely. If there was a timer on our discussion, I'd
Yeah,
be tomorrow, just keep going. And
yeah.
you are such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and just when you use the word vibration, I feel that vibration with you, of just that sense of service, and operating in a space of making this world better. And I'm just so grateful that you're here doing the work you do, because we need more of that.
Yeah,
We,
sacrifice.
so thank you for sharing in this space with me today. Thank you for, holding this. And I really think that for anybody listening, they're walking away with, feeling very inspired about everything that you've shared.
It's all about one. If one person can find some positivity, then we succeeded for the day.
Yes. So thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to diving into more of your content.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. Love to come back on in the future sometime.
Absolutely. That was such an invigorating episode with Mr. Jack Brickhouse. Such a motivational person. I love his story, and I absolutely love everything that he is doing in the community, in business. So many bright spots. I hope that you were just as inspired as I was. So here is the major takeaway that I have from the time with Jack. And it's going back to mindset and the importance of mindset, and how we can get into those ruts where we tell ourselves things that keep us from the pursuit of our dreams. So it could either be not starting something that you've been thinking about, or it could be at that point where you want to quit because it's too hard, or it feels like it's too hard. But I love the way that Jack talked about you're halfway there if that's how you feel. You're in the thick of it. You can get halfway back, or you can go halfway forward if you're at that 50-yard line. I love football too, so I love that analogy so much. You can be Tom Brady in those situations where the odds are stacked against you and you're in the fourth quarter losing the game. How many times have we seen Tom Brady turn things around at the 11th hour because of his grit, determination, focus, and knowing that there is still time left on the clock to win the game. What is that clock for you? Pursue your goals and your dreams with urgency. So if you're at that point right now and you're keeping yourself from getting started for whatever reason that may be, or keeping yourself from continuing, I want you to take a hard look and a hard pause to focus on, why are you doing this? What is your why behind the pursuit of this dream of yours? Why do you wake up and choose to do this? Are you really ready to throw in the towel or quit before you've even gotten started? It starts with you. And that is why I say you are your only limit, so take action today. I say it for a reason every single time you tune in to this podcast, because it takes repetition and it takes consistency to understand and remind ourselves that we are capable of absolutely everything we want in our lives, in relationships, in our professional life, in our spiritual life, with our friendships, with our money, with the fun and the social aspects of our lives. We're in control of all of those things. And yes, I've said this before and I'll say it again, there will be curveballs. There will be unanticipated events. There will be surprises. It happens all the time. I'm not a fan of the times when this happens, because it's happened just about, every day of the week for most of the time for me. That's a regular occurrence, but it's our resiliency and our resolve that allow us to persevere. So I encourage you to reflect and to keep on pushing. Thanks so much for tuning in. You know that another episode that is inspiring and awesome is coming forward, because it is what I do here on the Born Unbreakable podcast. So come back again. And hey, if there is a guest that you want to hear from, if you want to share your story, if there's a topic that you want to hear about, hit me up. Let me know. Des@bornunbreakable.com. I am always open to ideas and hearing from you, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. So thanks so much. All right. Rant complete. Have an amazing day. Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Jack is freaking inspirational, so you better be sharing this episode with somebody. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.